Hello, I'm Bill Hammond, and I actually paid to see this. If you're seeing this right now, clearly you've been to my blog, and the fact that I'm even doing this tells you we're going to do something a little bit different today. The basic idea is a couple years ago, in the lead up to, I believe, Avengers Infinity War, I decided to kind of go through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe and rank the films for a back row thoughts column. Mostly this was just for fun, but at the same time, I hadn't seen all the films at that point, and it made sense to kind of get a catch up before we really, got to the fireworks factory, as a lot of us put it. So, with that in mind, and with the last year doing stuff on Zoom and doing videos and podcasts with my friends in Brooklyn at Behind the Rabbit Productions, I figure let's give it a go, see if doing videos is even worth a thing. And over this holiday weekend, being bored, I finally watched the two Pixar films that I had not previously seen. So we'll get to those in due course. So the basic idea here is that I'm going to go through each of the 24 Pixar films that are currently out there in chronological order, and we're going to use this lovely tier maker site that we have here. Mostly, it's used for gaming, but it works here. We have tiers of S, A, B, C, D. Again, this is more of a gaming thing than a movie thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to change those because we're not going necessarily by any kind of letter grading that I gave to the films when I first watched them. This is more like how much staying power they had, how they compare to the others, and just generally how much I enjoy them. That said, bearing in mind there are a couple of things. There's a few qualities that I think really make a great Pixar film, and among those are the quality of the animation, the imagination of the story, how well the characters stay with you, the voice work. There's a lot of stuff, and of course, in the best of films, the ones that just truly just make us re-examine our lives and kind of question sometimes even the very nature of our existence. It's a mind trip at times, certainly. So what we're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna go through each of the 24 films in chronological order, and we're going to put them on this list, S, A, B, C, D, whatever. Then once we're done with that, I'll kind of rearrange them within each tier so that we can get what is my definitive ranking of the 24 Pixar films to date, as of the day that I'm recording this, July 5th, 2021. So let's get into this. Let's have some fun. Let's see if doing videos is even worth the time, effort, or energy. Let's have some fun. So of course we start off with Toy Story 1995, the one that started it all, the very first 3D CGI animated feature film. It's just by its very nature, you kind of have to put it in the A tier. Just it really was a unique seminal achievement in film history. But even more so than that, it's just a really good story. I mean, we've had the idea of toys coming to life when their owners aren't there. I mean, I remember the Christmas toilet was a Muppet special back in the 80s, and oddly enough, that one probably even goes further and it's a little bit darker because if you're caught out, you basically become petrified and lose your soul, for lack of better terminology. Uh, Toy Story doesn't go that far, but the idea of coming to terms with who you are and your role in life, those are some those are some pretty heavy themes for a kids movie. Um, you also, of course, have Randy Newman's spectacular score, and "You've Got a Friend in Me." That song is in the Disney pantheon. And what really boggles my mind in the best way possible is 26 years later, this animation still holds up. I mean, it's a bit more shiny and glossier than later works of Pixar and the rest of the animation studios. It could probably have stood to be a little bit more textured, a little bit more grained, but you can look at studios now like Sony or DreamWorks, and they're putting out CGI animated films that aren't even up to this standard 26 years later. That's how great Toy Story is. launched a whole franchise that honestly, you could say it didn't really need to because the film still stands on its own, just as a self-contained story. But it's also one of only two franchises in the Pixar canon that really warranted sequels as far as the quality is concerned. So yeah, no question there. Toy Story's in the original Toy Story, it's an A tier. No, not even a hesitation. A Bug's Life, on the other hand, this is a little bit. Where do we put A Bug's Life? This is kind of like the forgotten one for a lot of fans. Um, so I'm gonna put it in the C tier for now. I may change my mind on that as we go, but especially if there's more that I think are in essence worse. But in a weird way, the animation almost seemed to take a step back compared to Toy Story's quality. And I mean, I like Kevin Spacey and Dave Foley doing the voices and everything. That's not a problem. The story is also not that grounded. Like a lot of the best Pixar stories kind of ground their affairs in some semblance of reality. So the idea that these insects that can somehow live for years and years, when I think the adult lifespan of a grasshopper is something like 2-3 months, kind of doesn't really work for me. Though Dennis Leary is an irate later ladybug, I'm pretty sure that's who it was. Uh, Definitely worked for me. There are definitely some funny moments. Of course, the caterpillar I always makes me laugh. So there are some really good elements that make me want to forgive this, but and maybe move it up to the B tier. This is one of those ones where when we do the intra tier ranking, like it's either going to be at the top of the C's or the bottom of the B's. It's like it's right in that middle ground. I think again, what puts it down below is the fact that it really is sort of the forgotten misfit child of the Pixar family. No one really thinks of it when they think of not just a great Pixar movie, but Pixar movies in general. And given how much they do like research and fun facts within the universes of the films now, I kind of, if there was ever to be a remake of a Pixar movie, I think A Bug's Life would be the one to do. If nothing else, to say like, ant colonies, just like beehives, are matriarchal societies. I mean, they have like a princess and a queen and whatever, but all the workers are still males. Like, no, in these societies, the females are also workers. The males are drones that just mate with the queen. Like, I think you can get some mileage out of having like Flick be female and uh explore that dynamic a little bit, and not do something that's directly LGBTQ related, because God forbid we sacrifice that Chinese box office. But you could definitely play around with it, and given the creativity of the studio and the people in charge of it, I think you could really have some fun with that. Toy Story 2. Fun dynamic here because you're going right back to the Toy Story well after the initial success of the first film and the minor setback of A Bug's Life. Um, and then we've had two more sequels since then. And it was always weird to kind of think that this is a really great movie. Solid B plus to A minus, even A in some circles. But until 2017 or so, this was objectively the worst Toy Story film, even though it's stupendous. The callbacks make sense in the idea of creating a franchise and doing sequel bait. We all love Rex running behind the cars as a Jurassic Park reference. The Star Wars references seem trite, but they also use part of the Star Wars crew on this, so it kind of makes sense. And of course, When She Loved Me, I think, is the first legitimate tear-jerking moment in Pixar history, and that just can't be ignored. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful film and a worthy successor. A little bit less quality than the original Toy Story and eventually Toy Story 3, but still on its own, it could still work. It could be a standalone movie. So we're gonna put this in the B tier for now. We might even move it up to the A's later on. I'm not entirely sure just yet, but uh it's still just amazing. Next, Monsters Inc. Like this was one of my favorites growing up. I mean, and I say growing up, it came out I think in 2001, so I was already 19 at the time. I'm aging myself. So I was technically grown up, but this is where you kind of figured out that there's really some imagination behind these stories. Um, I love the dynamic between Sully and Mike Wazowski. Billy Crystal and John Goodman play them so well. Steve Buscemi as that little slimy motherfucker. Oh, Randall, just such a great oozingly evil villain. And I kind of hate that they retconned his squint in Monsters University. Um, the Abominable Snowman. I mean, that's when we first started to kind of realize the whole John Ratzenberger thing was going to be a thing. Um, and Boo is just objectively adorable. You can't hate on a moment. It even kind of started the whole trope of like, final climactic scenes being in some giant, weirdly constricted yet somehow wide open area. I mean, technically, Toy Story 2 did it first with the whole luggage conveyor belts thing, but Monsters Inc. really took it to the next level and really defined the trope with that whole factory of swinging doors and everything. Um, the and then of course the moment where at the very end when Sully goes back to the door and just hears Boo say "Kitty" again, not a dry eye in the house. Like this is when you really started to think Pixar's got legs on this. Like they know what the hell they're doing, and that's when Pixar films became must see movies. You had to just, no matter what they had coming out, you had to give it a shot. That was the moment. So yeah, Monsters Inc. Pretty solid A level there. Finding Nemo. Okay, this is going to be a fun one. I'm not as big a Finding Nemo fan as other people. That's not to say I don't like it. I there's a lot of stuff like the idea of a parent doing everything they can for their kid. Um, Nemo's headstrong, adventurous nature. Crush by himself is amazing. I went to Disneyland a few years ago with a friend, and there's a little like Crush like stage show that's mostly for little kids. But basically, there's like a voice actor behind a curtain, and there's like an animated Crush that is programmed to basically move along a screen and speak for the actor behind. So it's kind of an interactive thing, and it was a lot of fun, and we somehow turned my friend and I somehow turned the session into a rendition of the Menomina song from the Muppets. It was so Crush always has a special place in my heart. Um, Darlene scares the crap out of me. Just not just in the idea of killing fish, but just being like if I ever have kids, that's like the worst type of kid I would ever want. Like I'd almost rather my kid be a psychopath than be that kind of rambunctious, careless, not evil, but just oblivious thing. Um, and of course, the whole all pipes lead to the ocean or whatever it was. There were thousands of kids worldwide that literally flushed their fish down the toilet thinking it was going to set them free, and it just killed them. So that was one of those times where you don't want art imitating life. I do, however, love the Bruce and the sharks. Of course, Bruce being the name of the mechanical shark in Jaws. Really nice bit of trivia for the astute viewer. But my biggest problem with Finding Nemo, I don't like Dory. I just don't. I've never really been that big a fan of Ellen DeGeneres as a comedian. Some bits in the '90s got me laughing, and of course, and of course, she revolutionized TV with the whole coming out episode and all that fun stuff. Um, but I always just kind of found her annoying because she's been doing the same bit for almost 40 years now. And now that there's been news coming about how problematic her talk show is, which is, I believe, ending after this year or next, just when her contract runs out, basically. It's kind of it's not making the character of Dory or the performance retroactively problematic, and I don't believe in doing that anyway. Because if it was okay at the time, then it should be okay now. It's like you can't judge yesterday by today's standards. It can caution you against doing stuff in the future, but don't penalize someone for the distant past when you're judging it by a modern standard. But again, I've just never really been that into her as a comedic performer, and her amnesia is more of a convenient way to just accidentally her and Marlon into different aspects of the plot. Um, I will admit I laughed when she first pretended to speak whale. That was a funny moment, but otherwise, she's never really been my cup of tea. Um, so on the whole, this is a good movie. Certainly, it's still, you know, part of that unbroken winning streak that Pixar started out with until, uh, well, one pretty obvious faltering point, which we'll get to in a bit. Uh, and just the innovations in the animation to get these, this water effect and the ripples and the lighting. Very good stuff there. So on balance, it's right, kind of right in the middle. Easy B for me there. And then we move on to The Incredibles. And I'm not even going to waste any time. Doo-dee-doo, doo-dee-doo, doo-dee-doo-dee-doo, S tier. I was amazed at this. I mean, Brad Bird is easily one of the greatest overall directors out there, but as an animator, like he's our Miyazaki basically. Like if there's a Brad Bird animated film, there's going to be something special about it. You know, from the plotting to the character design to the action sequences, like it just blew my damn mind how great this was. There wasn't a false note to be had in the entire freaking picture. I mean, you get the midlife crisis of Mr. Incredible. You get the suspicions and balancing romantic career and family life with Helen, and uh and of course the shot where she basically like kind of like stares at her own ass in the mirror and just wonders if it's too big. It's like, no, honey, you slay. You just freaking slay. You own that shit all day. You are gorgeous. I loved Sarah Val as Violet. Dash and Jack are a lot of fun. Syndrome, Jason Lee, God, such a good, understandable, fun villain. Oh my god. Like, and in a weird way, like he's also kind of like the poster child for Brad Bird's worldview. Like he's kind of gone on and off record a few times, basically like with this movie and others, basically saying that the idea that extraordinary people should be basically given more license to do whatever the hell they want is a kind of libertarian view, like a social Darwinism view that like the top will rise and the bottom will fall. So the idea of Syndrome basically creating a fake superhero to make everyone no longer super, basically he's a participation trophy personified. Say that 3 times fast. He kind of like stands in for that viewpoint, which can sound problematic when you think about it for a little bit too long. But this movie is just so much fun. It's unbelievable how much detail went into this and how much reality gets infused into what is essentially just a silly superhero flick. I mean, you get why Bob hates his job. You get why Violet is nervous in school. These are all real shared experiences that we all deal with. And this voice cast with Craig T. Nelson and Holly Hunter, absolutely perfect. The moment Mirage's eyes light up when they're attacking the plane and Helen's on the radio saying they're children of our, like when that's her crisis of conscience, I made the exact same face. It was like, holy crap, we're actually doing this. And I just got me hook, line, and sinker. Like I've said that before, but it just got me. Just every moment just grips me. And then of course you have Frozone off on the side as a great supporting character. You have Edna, Brad Bird himself doing the voice, creating the no capes meme. Um God, what else? So much great stuff in this movie. Oh man. I'm still geeking out about it. Monologuing became a thing with a name on it. Like we all seen it. You know, it's a Bond thing, it's a superhero thing. Like we've all seen it. It's got a name now because of this movie. Like this was the first peak of Pixar, and it subverted and yet redefined the superhero genre. Like we would not have the MCU without the Incredibles. I will die on that hill. Um like this is Pixar like fully realized potential. The possibilities are endless. And again, the animation still holds up. It's been nearly 20 years. So yeah, instant S tier for The Incredibles, no hesitation whatsoever. And then, oh god, the streak is broken. Cars. Here's what I got to say about Cars. This is I think even more than Toy Story. This is the first Pixar movie that it's like, nope, this is for kids only. There is nothing for the parents to enjoy really. Uh Having Larry the Cable Guy be Mater is like, it's good for a couple of cheap jokes. And 2006 was still when the blue collar comedians were kind of in the zeitgeist. Made a little bit of sense, but here's my big thing with Cars. The section at Disneyland or California Adventure, I think is that section of the park that's devoted to Radiator Springs. That's infinitely more fun than the actual movie. And that says a lot. There is the valuable lesson of, hey, stop and smell the roses, slow down a bit, small town charm. I come from a small town myself. But it doesn't negate the idea of a worldly existence. And there's way too many questions that get raised about how things work in this universe. I mean, the opening scene, you have this, this race with McQueen, and it's like, how are cars in the stands taking hundreds of thousands of photos? Do they have cameras in their headlights? How does this work? Like which vehicles are sentient and which ones aren't? What are the rules? Why are there tractor cows? Do they eat the tractor cows? Is that cannibalism? This is a movie that says if you take 2 seconds to think about it, you're spending way too much time to think about it. Like it banks on you just completely suspending disbelief and saying, "Oh, cars with eyeballs, let's go." And I'm just not down for that. I remember when I saw it in the theater with my family. There was like a dad with 2 young kids in front of us, and the kids would just not shut the hell up. And my mom chastised him for basically not being a parent. And the guy tried to pick a fight with my mom, and I was like, "Oh, so you're Mater, you're the redneck. It's like, I'm not a violent guy, but like, do I really have to beat a man's ass right now to defend my mother? This is what Cars has done to me." No. The animation is still gorgeous. And there are a couple of funny moments. So it's not at the bottom of the barrel, but if you ever thought that there's no way Pixar could falter, this was the proof that they could. Bugs Life, they hadn't really hit their stride yet, and it was still pretty good for what it was. Cars was a blatant attempt to sell toys and be a pure kiddie movie. Didn't really work for me. Ratatouille, on the other hand, really works for me. I love Ratatouille. Again, Brad Bird directing it. The physical comedy of Linguini just bouncing around the kitchen as Remy controls him through the hair. It's a bullshit concept, but it's so well executed you don't care. Um, I had a crush on Janine Garofalo around this time, which really held over from college. So it was nice to see her or hear her being the love interest. It was a nice little moment for me personally. Uh, and then, of course, Peter O'Toole being the villainous food critic. Um, and he's right. We kind of live off of our vitriol, and it's fun to read and write these scathing reviews, but we can sometimes just lose sight in our own cleverness. But that moment where he tastes the ratatouille and gets transported back to his childhood and his mother make these are the moments that define Pixar. Like, even if you don't remember a single frame of the rest of the movie, even if you can somehow confuse it for Flushed Away, which was a completely different movie by a completely different studio, even though it also involves rodents in the sewer. Uh, that moment, that gorgeous, genius moment of that flashback, that alone puts it in the A tier. Is it's a moment that just purely encapsulates the joy and unbridled love that people have for their passions and reminds us where we come from and how we basically behave as humans. And of course, the fact that it's a rat delivering it makes it all the more poignant. Someone that you would dismiss as vermin, as disgusting, can make that kind of magic happen. It was truly a great moment. And of course, just throughout the film, Patton Oswalt as Remy is just a great vocal performance. So yeah, this is one of the this is another kind of forgotten movie along the lines of A Bug's Life, but because it has that one magnetic moment, people at least remember that much, and that's why it stays in the conscious and keeps going and keeps itself in the top of the ranks. And at this point, we hit like the golden age of Pixar, starting with Ratatouille and then going to Wall-E. My God, I I was at a loss for words when I first saw this. The idea of basically having a nearly silent first act with this Johnny Five looking motherfucker as a robotic Buster Keaton who's obsessed with Hello Dolly, the post-apocalyptic world that makes total sense given uh our American consumerism, continued in space with the satire of everybody becoming gelatinous blobs of sedentary life, the pure innocence of the love story between Wally and Eve, uh, and honestly, the fact that it's basically a genderless love story. Like, there's apart from the sound alike names, you really can't just make a determination as to who might be male or who might be female. Um, Not that and shows it doesn't even matter. Love is love in that respect. Bold statement. Uh, the absolutely gorgeous animation, both of a desolate Earth and the reaches of deep space. I mean, just everything about this movie screamed to me all time classic from the moment I first saw it. And we kind of have it to thank for some changes at the Academy because amazingly, this was not nominated for Best Picture. It won animated feature, but that seems like a gimme at this point for Pixar. They've won it more than I think almost half the time that this category has existed. Pixar has won it, and Disney, its parent company, basically has gotten a further, I think, 25% of the entire history of the category. Like what, Shrek, Spirited Away, and Curse of the Were Rabbit. I think that's basically the major extent of the non-Disney Pixar canon winning in that category. So it doesn't really mean much to just get animated feature. Hell, a couple years ago they dispensed with it as the first category and just gave it to Toy Story 4 in a year that really there were a lot better films. It's just kind of a given at this point. So between Wall-E, The Dark Knight, and The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, those three films were left out of the Best Picture field in 2008, which eventually, and of course, the Oscar eventually went to Slumdog Millionaire due to some heavy lobbying from the Weinstein Company, and look how that turned out. Um, so the next year, we got Best Picture expanded to 10 films, and because of that, the next 2 years, a Pixar film got nominated for Best Picture, which again just guaranteed that it was going to win Best Animated Feature, but it basically said like, no, you have to take these films serious now. Like they're not just kiddie cartoons. Even the ones that are meant for kids, and I would argue Wall-E is meant more for kids than adults. These are serious works of art. And just because they're made on a computer rather than on a soundstage does not negate the quality of the artistic product and the actors' performances that are involved, the artistic direction, all this kind of stuff. You got to take it seriously. Beauty and the Beast getting nominated for Best Picture back in '92 was kind of a one-off, holy crap thing that we knew it was never going to win. But now we're the case where it's like, no, you actually have to give these films serious consideration. And the fact that you didn't in favor of things like Slumdog Millionaire, I think Benjamin Button and Milk, please. I mean, they're good films. I'm not gonna argue that they're not, but they pale in comparison to The Dark Knight and Wall-E. Just so yeah, it was the martyr for some substantive change at the Academy that's lasted until this day. So if nothing else, it has that as part of its legacy. But even without that, it's still one of the most gorgeous films I've ever seen in my life. And then we get down to Up again, golden age of Pixar going on right now. Those first 8 minutes will rip your heart out, do a jaunty Irish jig on it, and you will thank Pixar for it. That is truly amazing. And again, almost without dialogue. I mean, the best Pixar shorts always turn out to be the ones that are essentially silent films that just show you much more than tell you stuff. And that opening was essentially the equivalent of beginning a film with an award-winning Pixar short. The rest of the film doesn't quite live up to that opening, but it's still such a fun adventure, and Ed Asner as Carl Fredricksen is just such a fun character. And then of course Doug, I still make squirrel jokes to this day. It's been what, 12 years now? Yeah. I will always break out a squirrel whenever something needs to be like a weird distraction. That shows its lasting power. And yeah, it doesn't make sense, the idea that you could somehow float your house off of its foundation with a bunch of helium balloons. The sheer physics of that is nonsense, but the visual of it more than makes up for it. And while Russell is a fun character and Kevin is a fun little distraction, it really is this whole idea of you waited so long to have your adventure without realizing that the adventure was your life with your wife and everything like that. And now you're truly honoring her, but also realizing the value of your own life. That's a beautiful message. And sometimes the execution doesn't quite get there, but overall, still a great one. And then we wrap up the golden age with Toy Story 3. Now, do you think I'm putting it here? Do you think I'm putting it here? Do you think I'm putting it here? Where do you think I'm putting it? Where do you think I'm putting it? Down here? No. What am I even kidding about? What am I trying to tease? It's an S tier. Duh. Oh my God. It's very rare when a sequel can outdo the original, especially a second sequel. I mean, again, this is like saying that Return of the Jedi is better than A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, and it's not. Though, if you go by the prequels, Revenge of the Sith is by default the best of the prequel trilogy. This, like Toy Story set the bar. Toy Story 2 continued the story in a logical way that within its own universe made sense and called back to the original and was a lot of fun. Toy Story 3 just threw the playbook out and said, we're going to tell one of the most devastatingly existential stories, and it's going to come from toys. We're going to learn about growing up and moving on and the impermanence of life, and it's going to be facilitated by screaming preschool kids. It's going to be, your villain is going to be a Care Bears knockoff voiced by Ned Beatty, rest in peace. Whatever you were expecting going into this movie, it completely blew away. It even one-upped When Someone Loved Me with Lotso's backstory. Like, you could argue it was being derivative, even trying to rip off Jesse's backstory, but instead it expanded upon the idea of being not really obsolete, but just being no longer needed, being downsized, and this was when we were coming out of a recession where a lot of people lost their jobs and were made redundant. So like this whole idea of truly being angry at the system that failed you resonated with a lot of parents and a lot of adults that were watching this film while their kids were laughing at Buzz Lightyear with a Spanish accent, which again, hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And then of course Michael Keaton and Jodie Benson being Barbie and Ken, that was a nice little side bit. And then of course that ending. There may not have been a more perfect ending to any film in Pixar history. This acceptance of your fate, this idea that if this is the end, it's a good end because we end together. And then once we get Ex Machina out of that, we find a way to continue. We find someone new to love and who'll love us. We're able to remain as we are emotionally, but still grow as individuals and find new purpose with the help of those who care the most about us. That's such a beautiful, perfect ending that it's no argument for me that Toy Story 3 is an S tier. I mean, Quentin Tarantino actually put that on his named that as his number one film of 2010. Tarantino. Again, you can't dismiss them as just cartoons anymore. One of the greatest directors in cinematic history said, no, the greatest film of 2010, no matter what the Academy says, no matter what Cannes says, no matter what anybody else says, to him, the number one film of 2010 is a cartoon. That is saying something. And you know what else is saying something? Yeah. Good Lord. This is bad. It's really freaking bad, you guys. This is one of the two that I had never seen. I didn't like the original Cars that much, especially not enough to shell out money to go see the sequel. I figured maybe I'll just catch it on video. And then when I found out how bad it was, like I held off until this weekend to finally just put myself out of my misery with it. Oh my God. Like, whoever at Pixar decided that in any universe, Mater should be a lead character. I'm not saying they should never work again because I know the pain of not working, but they should never be in charge of a movie ever again, certainly. Good God. Everything about this is just terrible on every level. I mean, first of all, we're talking it's like 2011 at this point. The blue collar phase has long run its course by this point. Nobody is clamoring for Larry the Cable Guy, real name Dan Whitney. I mean, I had my faith with the blue collar comics. I grew up listening to Jeff Foxworthy and Bill Engvall in the 90s. I enjoyed the blue collar comedy tour films, especially Ron White. I got some chuckles out of Larry the Cable Guy, but never did I think he should ever be a movie star. Not once. Yet they gave him lead roles in live action and animated films. Like, no. Just no, no. So you have this movie, you have Lightning basically shunted to the background, even though he's the ostensible star of the franchise, while he does this worldwide race circuit, which is only 3 races, to test out this new clean energy fuel, which is actually just gasoline with an additive in it that can be ignited by an electromagnetic pulse because fuck physics, am I right? Uh, and meanwhile, Mater is teaming up accidentally with 2 British spy cars played by Michael Caine and Emily Mortimer to thwart an international conspiracy where basically the overall message of being big oil forever, which just, oh my god, William Hung was less tone deaf. There's not a single redeemable thing about this movie. Like even the animation seems lazy and tossed off, and then God, all the puns, all the fart jokes. I mean, literally, the inciting event of the entire conspiracy is pretending that Mater pissed on the floor. You know, the State Farm jingle. Good God, I, how? I understand capitalism. I understand the desire to make money and merchandise and stuff like that. But who could have ever thought this was a good idea? This is Pixar's Emoji Movie, for God's sakes. 40 years before the Emoji Movie even happened. There's just no excuse for this. Like, there's no earthly way this should have ever been made. Like, it was one thing to think, okay, Cars had a bit of a blip with the original Cars. Like, they may have faltered a little bit, but you can still see a little bit of entertainment value for kids in it. Fine, whatever. But Cars 2, no, just no. And now they play "You Might Think" during a montage, but they don't even. I don't even think they use the actual original version by the Cars. I think it sounded like a cover by Weezer. I don't know. It's like, if you're gonna license the song, just license the dang song. You know? I don't get it. Let's move on before we blow a gasket here. Brave, kind of mid range here. I don't know. I'm gonna put it in the C tier for now. Brave, to me, has a couple of really good elements. I like the fact that this is a mother-daughter story because it's basically a rule at Disney that the parents have to either be dead or evil. And this is not a case where that's just not the case in this one. Merida's mother, Eleanor, is strict, certainly, but her intentions are well good, and she is a deeply caring mother who's trying to make a connection with her daughter. I am all for that. I'm 100% behind that. The animation is also quite strong. You know, hey, convince an Irishman that a redheaded Scottish lass is attractive. Gee, yeah, hardest of tests in that one. Kelly McDonald does really well with the voice work. It's all the extraneous shit that I didn't care for. Like, I mean, first of all, you're calling it Brave, which is just cutting off half of Braveheart as your title. Which, come on, that's a little bit lazy. The Will o' the Wisps are stupid. They look like protein pellets out of a Pac-Man game, and they're more the villain of the film than even more do because they decide what fate is, and you can't escape that until you can, until they let you or they won't or whatever. And they don't actually do anything useful till a climax. I mean, they just kind of fuck around. Uh, the witch having basically an answering machine as a cheap joke. Her having the Pizza Planet truck on her workshop table 1,000 years before trucks can exist is a lame Easter egg. And while I really do love the mother-daughter dynamic, turning Eleanor into a bear is utterly meaningless to me. It's cheap conflict. You could have just as easily put a curse on her that she might die or something, or something more run of the mill, so that she could still have this conflict but still be human and talk and stuff. that would have made more sense to me than literally turning her into a bear. Hell, let her be herself, but only Merida can see her as herself, so that her father and others still see her as a bear. Do it that way, so you can still have those action moments without jumping the proverbial Bruce. So I was surprised that this beat out Wreck It Ralph for animated feature for 2012. It's a good looking movie, but and it has the uh, it has the trivia significance of having Merida be the first Pixar Disney princess, but it doesn't really do much for me otherwise. It's headstrong teenager breaking the rules and doing whatever she wants and somehow getting rewarded for it. It's too basic of a story. And then the slump continues with Monsters University. This is going in the D tier with Cars 2. Prequels, on the whole, are not a good idea. And Disney has proven that many a time. Just in the last few years with the Maleficent movies and Cruella. Like, you don't have to retcon everything or explain every reference that we might have had a question about at some point. Like I didn't need to know why Randall squints, especially if the answer is going to be some kind of lame. Oh, he used to wear glasses, but now he doesn't. Who cares? There's no real stakes in the movie because we know that eventually Mike and Sully are going to grow up to be best friends and co-workers, and then discover that laughter is a better energy source than screams. So all of this is just kind of window dressing for like visual gags, and some of the visual gags are good. I'll give them that. Like especially when it comes to the frat games, but Dean Hardscrabble basically why is she one of the only monsters that wears clothes? Like her and the scare teacher like are the only ones that really wear clothes until we get the Uzma Kappa and the fraternity geared people. It's like no one wears clothes in the monster world except for like Celia in Monsters Inc. Like again, what are the rules? Give me some kind of consistency. The slug monster that takes the whole semester just to get out the door and get to his first class, only to turn around. Like it's a cheap joke that doesn't really work. And they bank too much on it. That's the real problem. They spend too much time banking on these jokes to sell the film, and they really don't work. And then of course you get all this stuff. They cheat, they get expelled, they whatever, and then they go end up working in the mail room at Monsters Inc. So Monsters Inc. is the only company on Infinite Earths that has internal upward mobility, so that you can actually rise up through the ranks. Come on, this was just pointless. Like I wouldn't have minded a Monsters Inc. sequel. That could have been a lot of fun. Like especially if you explored what happens when Boo grows up, and seeing if Sully remains a part of her life and how she reconciles it. That could have been a top tier Pixar movie, but this was just a cheap, this was a cheap cash grab, and it didn't make any sense. Okay, and we go from the bottom straight to the top. Inside Out. It's not only one of my favorite Pixar movies; it's one of my favorite films of all time. At the end of 2019, I did a list of the top 100 films of the 2010s decade, 2010 to 2019, and Inside Out was at the top for me. This movie broke me in so many ways. Like I was amazed at how well they portrayed emotion. I was amazed at how imaginative the adventure inside Riley's head was. You can make your jokes that it stole Herman's head as a concept all you want. The execution is masterful beyond words. This idea that we need to embrace our loving darkness it still gets me to this day. It still wrecks me. What I always kind of reference when I talk about this, there's a season 1 episode of The Simpsons called Moaning Lisa, where basically for the entire episode, Lisa's just kind of sad and detached from everything, and she's very cynical about everything. She doesn't see a point to anything she does. And Marge tries to get her just to put all that aside and smile for the sake of smiling. Then she takes her to school, takes her to band practice, and she sees, basically the kids taking advantage of her and Mr. Largo passive aggressively taunting her for her own individuality, to the point where Marge just snatches her into the car, drives away, and says, "No, I was wrong. You want to be sad? You be sad. We'll ride it out with you. And when you're done being sad, we're still going to be there because we're your family and we love you." And I was like, yes, that is it. That is how you do it. That is the through line of this entire movie. Whatever is going on in your head, if you have a loving family, they will ride it out with you. They will work with you. They will find what brings you joy and what brings you sadness, and show you that that sadness is not a bad thing. Anger is not a bad thing if you channel it properly. That is just so crucial and amazing to me. It's something beyond anything I could have imagined. And you still get the jokes, Lewis Black playing Anger, that you could not have more perfectly cast an animated role. Amy Poehler being Joy, that she was basically made for that role. It all makes the best kind of sense. And the the dreams, freaking Bing Bong, Bing Bong. You made me cry for a character named Bing Bong. What the hell? This is how good you are. And I love John Ratzenberger gets a lot of credit for being basically in every Pixar movie, even though he really didn't have a significant role. Past God, past Wally, I don't think he really had a significant role. Toy Story 3 with Ham, I guess maybe, but Richard Kind's been in a lot of these films too. He was in A Bug's Life. He's been in quite a few himself. Jeff Garland too. So credit where it's due there. That it's not just Ratzenberger racking up the credits here. But yeah, Inside Out, S tier, Pantheon. What is not the Pantheon is The Good Dinosaur. Yikes. Good Dinosaur has two things going for it. I should say three. The fact that that Spot looks like a less psychotic version of what was his name? Darlene, Darla, or whatever it is from Finding Nemo. Like even though he's a feral human with his tongue sticking out, panting like a dog, he's somehow the face design is essentially the same, and he's like the less psychotic version of her. So I'll like that. The animation is actually pretty gorgeous when it comes to things like the vistas and the landscapes and the water. I mean, that looks like real freaking water. That's pretty good. And then there's like this multi-horned dinosaur that's like a Stephen Wright character. Is like, oh, this one over here, this one prevents you from having unattainable goals. Like that got a laugh out of me, certainly. Apart from that, though, no. This is The Lion King with dinosaurs, and it doesn't work. I went to see this because of the the selling point in the trailers and the taglines, basically saying like, what if the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs missed? Okay, so you're going to show me an evolved society where dinosaurs remain the dominant species, and then you don't. You just fast forward a few million years. Dinosaurs haven't gone extinct, and they can talk to each other, but it's a cartoon. Who the hell cares? And they coexist with the earliest form of man. Big whoop. And you turn it into this like weird Lion King-esque Western, which, what a waste of Sam Elliott, is all I can say. And then raptors that look like Florida meth addicts, and the pterodactyl, like none of that shit worked for me. Arlo's not a fun character. He doesn't really experience any growth. He's just a whiny little bitch the whole time. And the whole making your mark thing, they did that with Brother Bear, and it was lame then. I don't know why you would then decide to do it with dinosaurs. That's it's like when they redo like Ghostbusters and say, "Oh, we're gonna just do it with ladies this time." Well, that doesn't add anything. Just because you're changing the demographic of the leads doesn't really change the story or add anything to the fucking proceeding. So it's like, oh, we're gonna do Lion King, but we're gonna do it with dinosaurs. And like, imagine if the guys from the Jurassic Park series, which that's its own little adventure in itself, decided, the next Jurassic Park movie, it's gonna be Terms of Endearment, but with dinosaurs. Not that I wouldn't like to see a terminally ill T Rex, I guess, but come on, you're Pixar. You have clearly established that you are better than this. Come on. And then we move on to Finding Dory. I swear they are better than this. Again, not a fan of Dory as a character, not a fan of Ellen DeGeneres as a performer. This kind of just rehashed a lot of the beats from the last movie. It it just didn't work for me, and the bullshit of them getting into this kind of like SeaWorld-esque park and then constantly jumping Marlin and Nemo jumping from every source of water to the next. It's like, you're saltwater ocean fish. You can't just jump from saltwater tanks to freshwater tanks to a cup of drinkable potable water. That's gonna F up your body chemistry. That's gonna actually like hurt you and stuff. It's like, even when they reach for the emotional stuff with Dory's memories and finding her parents and anything, like, it doesn't, it just rings hollow because, again, just like in the first movie, her amnesia is convenient to the whims of the screenwriter. It's like, sometimes she comes up with something, sometimes she can't remember anything, and it's all because what's going to create, it's just on this idea of what's going to create the most tension for the plot, and it just doesn't work. And then the stuff with the otters, and it's like, oh, how do we cause a traffic jam in Southern California? I don't know, wait 2 minutes. It's like, come on. Freaking sea otters, come on. And then the whale shark named Destiny is like, oh my god, just say you're my density at this point. For it would be less lame and derivative. Yeah, it's weird. Only Toy Story and The Incredibles had even functional sequels or expanded franchises. Everything else that tried failed miserably. Which brings us to Cars 3. I will actually put this one up alongside the original Cars because it's kind of the same story, just drawn so much better. You can really tell how well the animation had improved between 2006 and I think 2017. But it's weird that it's an improvement by default to go back to the original story. I mean, Cars 2 was so bad that I think it contributed to Owen Wilson trying to kill himself. I can't prove that, but just a weird suspicion in the back of my head. But yeah, going back to basically the original story format for the sequel and just drawing it better, that doesn't say too much, but it is an improvement. It shouldn't have been, but it was. But even then, it's got a lot of glaring problems. I don't like this overall theme of that you should embrace your own obsolescence. It's like, I know there were some differences in the car designs in the first movie, like McQueen being basically the equivalent of an early 2000s stock car model, whereas the King, Richard Petty, was much more of like a 60s or 70s model looking like. But these are cars. When they get injured, they go to a shop to get fixed. So it's like, one, how do you truly allow as a racing circuit to have all these completely redesigned cars enter the field knowing they're going to dominate, and apparently doing it mid-season, but you don't have any kind of infrastructure or apparatus set up to see that Lightning gets basically the same modifications so that he can still compete? It's like, when models change in NASCAR, they create rules, they create standards by which you can adjust the body of the vehicle by such and such degrees so that every car is on at least aerodynamically, at least by design, an equal playing field. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the engine and the abilities of the driver and pit strategies and all that stuff like that. I used to be into NASCAR. I'm not really anymore, but I still know stuff. Um, it's it's weird that they just kind of just gloss over that and just let this Jackson Storm like. And by the way, Lightning's nemesis is named Storm. Lightning's nemesis is named Storm. Ugh. What's rat? They're gonna do a Ratatouille sequel where his nemesis is named Cat. Come on. Um. So that really just sat with me. Weird, like one that you gloss over and create this aspect that there can just be cars that exist and enter the circuit to just make Lightning obsolete with no way to make him not obsolete. But then you have this whole emotional arc of him trying to regain himself and then just surrendering to it and deciding to coach this Cruz character, which again, doing it with female characters or doing it with this type of character or doing it with this racial character, it doesn't work. It's still the same story. Do something new, you dicks. You could have still had this work if you added something to it, but just determining that, oh well, here's a younger female racer who never got a chance, so I'm just going to accept retirement and give it to her. What logic does that ever make? It's like, I mean, look at regular industry. Someone's been working at a factory for 20 odd years. The company creates a machine to replace you. What person says, oh, well, I'm happy being forced into a layoff or retirement, and just for fun, I'll even train the 18-year-old operator of the machine to replace me. No. It's a horrible lesson, especially when you're trying to posit this whole, purity of small town America shit. Come the frig on. Such a bad idea. But again, it is still better than the first movie, and it's way better than the second movie, just on the looks alone. There's really not much more to say. Like Cars is the blind spot for Pixar. It's just there to sell toys and make money off of whiny kids being placated by their parents. There's nothing more to it. And next, we move on to Coco. We're in the home stretch, folks. We're getting there. Coco, I'm going to put as a solid B. Solid B for Coco. I love the imagination of the Land of the Dead. I love the purity of Miguel's love for music. I love Remember Me as a song, even though they played it way too many times. The film does raise a lot of questions about how this version of the afterlife works, that I don't think the film was ready to even consider, much less answer. I think they were much more going for the visual spectacle, which, to their credit, it's amazing. But story-wise, it's kind of straightforward. It's just, kind of like Brave in that it's, it's a it's a strong-willed teenager disobeying their family to do what they want to do. And in the end, there are no real consequences for that. In fact, the family comes over to their side when it's all said and done. It ranks higher than Brave because it's better looking than Brave and has better music than Brave. That's basically where it is. I did really enjoy it. I absolutely loved watching it. And the cultural significance of it. Again, 25 years ago, Bug's Life would have never considered trying to do the kind of research to give this a sense of verisimilitude that Coco has when it comes to things like Day of the Dead, Mexican culture, that sort of stuff, the sugar skulls, all that fun stuff. And the best, kind of integration with stuff is the stuff that you don't even really register. It's just kind of there in the background, but you notice it and you appreciate, like, oh yeah, I I get that. I've seen that before. Like that those little moments uh are, you know, it's harder to appreciate, but when you do, it's really well worth your time and your effort. Incredibles 2 also gets a B. Uh, Apart from the Toy Story series, the only solid sequel in the bunch. And it kind of more leans into to that semi-problematic thing I was talking about earlier with Brad Bird, basically deciding that, if you're just inherently better than someone else, you should get more privilege. Uh, Again, not so much, but to really endorse there. But again, the action sequences are amazing. The upgrades to the animation over the 14-year gap are really well. I still have a crush on Elastigirl. um, let's see what else. The role reversal of Helen and Bob is a lot of fun. Jack in the freaking raccoon. I have to rethink this actually. Jack. Do I want to move it up? Jack and the raccoon. Jack and the raccoon. Oh my god! Like that was just such a moment of inspired beauty. Tex Avery is singing from heaven. Yeah, I got to upgrade to the A tier. I really do. It's just too perfect. It's so well done. And then of course you have these really fun new characters like Brick and Void, like and Crush. Like those are fun one-off characters. Uh Evelyn's not that great of a villain. She's kind of telegraphed from the opening minutes. And I mean, hell, uh, if you mispronounce her name, it's Evil Endeavor. I mean, it's right there for you. But I still kind of like her characterization and the justification of her anger makes sense. Uh, this idea that you shouldn't be depending on people to save you when they're not regulated or even available half the time. You know, that at least offers a counter to Brad Bird's thing. So I admired that, at least that he's willing to entertain the other side of the argument. So there's a lot of good stuff there. Um, but God, that raccoon fight. I mean, good God. I mean, release that on its own. It's an Oscar-winning short. Oh God, fun. Like I may have to just go back and watch that now when I'm done doing this. All right, final four. Toy Story 4. I'm putting it in the B's. It's good. And there are a few moments where that emotional resonance really gets hammered in. And forgive me for sniffling. Like I'm just getting a little misty-eyed. Bonnie's nervousness on her first day of kindergarten makes perfect sense. We've all been there. The sheer gut punch of Gabby getting tossed aside when she finally achieves her goal. Oh man, that was such a beautiful, tragic moment, and it made perfect sense. This idea of trying to change yourself for the betterment of someone else, only for it to blow up in your face. There's so many real world examples of that you can't help but weep for her a little bit, even though she's the bad guy. Key and Pill have a lot of fun moments. Duke Kaboom, Keanu, really fun character. But on the flip side, wasn't really in love with having Bo come back. I mean, I get it just to have the resolution to the character. But you could have just had that in that opening sequence where they're saving RC, which was really cool and really well animated. That looked like live action, honest to God. There's some fun moments, but it seemed kind of superfluous. But more importantly, you had to undo the most perfect ending in Pixar history to make this film happen, and all for a goddamn spork. Sorry, I'm not on board. You had it. You nailed it. You got the perfect ending, and then you just have, again, this just like with Cars 2 is like, Woody just embraces his obsolescence and decides to go off on his own. And then there's whole thing with Forky having an existential crisis is played for laughs rather than anything serious or endearing. Just didn't sit right with me. It's a good movie. And if it had been Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 3 was Toy Story 4 with a few beat changes here and there, I could get behind that. But it's whereas Toy Story 3 was like the perfect ending to a series, Toy Story 4, it's the Christmas Abe goes to summer camp of the series, and it's fine, but it's not anything special. And the same can be said for Onward. It's all right. I like the brotherly bond, certainly. But again, we're back into this dead parent well of Disney and Pixar. And if you're gonna have this fantastical world, I guess this is one of those times where I don't want you to ground something. I like the idea of having a magical fantasy world that's basically just suburbia but with elves. Okay, looks nice, I guess, but apart from having a magic staff and your entire plot driven by a Dungeons and Dragons rulebook with Magic the Gathering cards, what else you got? It's fine for what it is. I liked it well enough. I was entertained. And again, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, having done so much work together in the MCU, they know each other well enough to play off each other. That they're friends. They're coworkers already. They're essentially 30% owned by Disney at this point, so they already have a palpable chemistry, even when it's just their voices. So that's at least to the film's credit. The Manticore stuff, Corey or whatever with Octavia Spencer, Julia Louis-Dreyfus played the mom, fine, whatever. I don't give a fuck. But the animation's fine for what it is. It's nothing groundbreaking, especially by Pixar standards, but it's got its moments. It's a solid base. It's just a good, entertaining movie that I think, and I guess maybe this is an insult to Pixar, but honestly, any other studio would have put out this film. You could see Sony or DreamWorks putting this out. It's kind of run of the mill. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. I like it. Just not enough to be like, oh my god, mind blown. This, on the other hand, Soul does blow your mind. Like, it ups the ante from Coco on this whole idea of just being lost in music. That you see that with real musicians all the time. You see that when people are at a concert and they're just feeling the music and they get in that zone, like they describe here, this physical zone. I feel that when I go to some shows. I feel that when I perform. I feel that when I used to play music and sing and sing. I don't do that anymore, but it's certainly there, and I remember it crystal clear as if it was doing it just now. The cat antics, meh. The body switch antics, meh. But Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey play off each other really well. I love the Jerrys. Great element, and especially the whole 2D string effect against a 3D backdrop. Really great animation. And then this whole existential idea of, imbuing a soul with personality traits and the great beyond, all the stuff like that. Like, a lot of people try to compartmentalize and group all the Pixar films together into this one massive canon where they all self-reference each other. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you have a wooden carving of the Pizza Planet truck in the middle of Brave. But when I watched this movie, I thought to myself, this could be like a de facto prequel for Inside Out. Because Inside Out, you have these core emotions that awaken upon birth, basically. And then these core memories get developed that then construct these islands of personality that are basically pre-programmed into the headquarters so you could actually make them. They just appear out of nowhere. Well, where do they get that stuff? Well, maybe they go to the great before. Maybe you get a little spark in you. Maybe Riley was made with a goofball and an honesty personality as part of her like little 6 dot sphere thingy mabobber to get her Earth pass. She goes down, and then once she has a memory to trigger it, boom, islands of personality. It's not the most batshit theory that's ever been out there. At least I hope not. So it's like I think they're really good companion pieces, and again, the best Pixar ones are the ones that kind of make you step outside of yourself and re-examine your basic humanity, what makes you who you are. So I absolutely love this kind of stuff. Soul, it doesn't quite make the S tier because again, the body swap antics, meh. But the existential questions, the zone, as it were, hell, just the animation that makes New York City look like real New York City, definitely are well with it. But one 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 specific note that definitely makes it not be able to make the S tier. Fuck jaywalkers, you deserve it. And finally, Luca. We got to the end here. All right, Luca, Luca, Luca. I'm sorry. It's got a couple of fun moments, but the first act is Little Mermaid, and the second and third act is like Italian Biff Tannen taunts you about riding a bike. I don't care. I like I love Jacob Tremblay. I love the voice cast in general. I mean, Jim Gaffigan's a lot of fun. Though Sacha Baron Cohen as that like anglerfish type sea monster thing, like that was more off putting than the actual anglerfish in Finding Nemo, as far as like design goes. Um, there's no stakes in the movie. There's no real sense of adventure. It's essentially a 90-minute commercial for Vespa. Like, you know, Santo Mozzarella is like it was like really Saint Cheese. You're just gonna go with different variations of Saint Cheese as your exclamation. Like, I think these are jokes that kids might find funny. But and you would see a lot of this stuff in like a DreamWorks or a Sony animated film. Like you could see this in like a Shrek knockoff, or I mean, hell, the sequence where he's kind of like daydreaming about the stars as fish is like it's straight out of Over the Moon. It sounds like it doesn't seem like a Pixar film, honestly. Even the animation's not that strong. I mean, it's good. It's the water effects are okay, but not even to the level of Finding Nemo. There's this one really good moment though when they're like underneath a boat and they're like crossing in the background, and you see them kind of like wipe from sea monster to human form as they pass behind a guy's head. You know, there's a couple of hints at it, but this is not really the type of animation you would normally see in a high grade Pixar movie. Like it's just kind of standard issue at this point. It's good for what it is, but you know it's. I think I gave it a C plus when I reviewed it. It's like it's just, it's just kind of there. So that's our tier list. We got 4 S tier, 6 A's, 5 B's, 4 C's, 5 D's. So now let's see if we can rearrange them. On the bottom here, Cars 2 goes absolute last. No question about it. Monsters U, just ahead of it. Luca, I would put at the top of the D tier. And Good Dinosaur, I'll put behind Finding Dory. That kind of seems like the correct bottom 5 to me. Cars 2, Monsters University, Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Luca. Up to the C's. I did say the Cars 3 is better than Cars, so I'll put Cars behind that. I would put Brave ahead of both Cars movies. I would put A Bug's Life in between Cars 3 and Cars. Again, Bug's Life kind of gets it better because it's forgotten, and they really hadn't figured out what they wanted to do as a studio yet. But that doesn't that kind of gives it a little bit of a curve gradient, a little bit of a forgiveness factor, but it's still kind of subpar. The B's, Coco is at the top of the B's. No questions asked there. Like it's the better version of Brave and it's got really good music. No questions asked there. I put Toy Story 4 at the bottom of the B's because again, apart from the entire Cars franchise, this is the one Pixar movie that you can say it did not need to happen, and it arguably shouldn't have. It's good for what it is, but I would have been just fine if it never happened. Toy Story 2, yeah, I would have it behind Coco and ahead of Finding Nemo. So yeah, and then onward and forth, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. The A's. Okay, the A's. This is actually kind of hard. I'm gonna put Incredibles 2 just ahead of Up. And I'm gonna put Monsters Inc. just behind Up. Ratatouille. First of all, let's move Soul up to right behind Toy Story. It's a question of where Ratatouille goes. Um, does it stay ahead of Incredibles 2? Does it stay ahead of Up? Yeah, basically what I'm feeling right now is that's proper. So Toy Story, Soul. Okay, yeah. And now for the S tier. Oh boy, the greatest four that Pixar has ever done. Whew, what do we do here? Do I want The Incredibles to be number one? No, I'm gonna put it in the. I'm gonna put it at number four. I'm gonna put Toy Story 3 at number three, appropriately enough. I, if Toy Story 4 hadn't happened, it would have a case for number one. Honestly, it would. And it's weird to penalize it for something else, but it's the same crew that did all these things, so they could have stopped this. They could have stopped Toy Story 4 from happening and cemented its legacy. Instead, it kind of got knocked back. So, Inside Out or Wally, my favorite film of the last decade versus the arguably what should have been the first animated film to win Best Picture. Oh man. Oh god, what do I do? What do I do? Yeah, Wally's number one. It has to be. Uh, there's just so much going on with this, and again, the fact that you could basically do the entire first act silent, the quality of the satire about consumerism and climate change, the genuine fun of the adventure. Oh man, I'm gonna go back and forth in this on my head a lot over the next few hours while I wait for this to post and everything. But I'm gonna stand by it for now. This is my definitive ranking as of 6 p.m. Pacific time on July 5th, 2021. 24th, Cars 2. 23rd, Monsters University. 22nd, The Good Dinosaur. 21st, Finding Dory. 20th, Luca. 19th, Cars. 18th, A Bug's Life. 17th, Cars 3. 16th, Brave. 15th, Toy Story 4. 14th, Onward. 13th, Finding Nemo. 12th, Toy Story 2. 11th, Coco. 10th, Monsters Inc. 9th, Up. 8th, Incredibles 2. 7th, Ratatouille. 6th, Soul. 5th, Toy Story. 4th, Incredibles. 3rd, Toy Story 3. 2nd, Inside Out. 1st, Wally. That's what I have. That come at me, argue with me, call me a fat dickish loser. I don't care. Like this is I've been thinking about this for days, and I'm gonna be thinking about it for a lot more. But this is where we kind of stand. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this didn't bore the crap out of you. I hope this didn't go on for way too long because I really haven't been watching the clock on this. But that's where it stands. That this is my list. These are the 24 Pixar films as they stand for me right now. We'll see if this works out. Let me know what you think. And as always, keep it locked on the blog, actuallypaid.com. And I might see you next time, or I'll write next time. Who knows? I'm Bill Hammond. I actually paid to see this.